And anything I say, I get repeated back, kind of like Edge in U2.
Well, let's try the other one then to see if that sounds a little better.
Oh, you mean I try?
Well, what you were doing before.
Okay, let's see if this is better. All right, so now, actually, I don't think I have to really listen to my own feedback, so I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, you sound good to me.
Okay, we can talk.
Well, I guess just to start, this year marks the 48th anniversary of Woodstock. I was curious about what went through your mind when you first walked on stage.
Well, remember that I had no plans of being there, and I did articulate it as best I could, but one thing was that this felt so much like a very small group of people gathered around a coffee table, passing a joint, and playing songs and talking, and it had an intimacy that I still to this day am surprised by.
Well, when I look back at all those performances, I've watched that movie numerous times, as a lot of us have, and I think you were the only one that was completely alone on stage.
That could be.
Because I know Richie Havens had, I think he had a bongo player behind him, or
and to be fair, Richie is a driving force. You could have 8 guys behind him, and he'd still be what was happening.
But I guess the whole idea of, like, you were the only one I could think of on the performer list that was completely 100% alone and not even plugged in. I mean, in essence, it was you and the guitar, it wasn't electric.
Yeah, I hadn't come with an instrument. I borrowed an instrument, so... Timmy Harden lent me his Harmony Sovereign, and that's what's on the movie.
Now, I've read the story about how you ended up there from the Albany airport in the helicopter. What performance for you stuck out the most, or what memory do you remember that you associate with that festival, looking back?
On some of the undeclared people, Creedence Clearwater as a trio was amazing. I just loved them that afternoon, and I believe Fogarty was unhappy with the performance, and of course never got in the movie, but I really enjoyed it. Of course, Sly Stone was miraculous. So I'd say, those are two. Also, Leslie West killed me that day. I just thought he was marvelous.
What's it been like for you if you've watched the clips recently, when you watch yourself up there? What do you think, looking back on it, when you see yourself up there?
No, I really don't do that. I don't know that it's that healthy because...
Well, it was a pretty impactful performance by all accounts of you being up there.
That could be, but I really was... unprepared, had not prepared, was enjoying the fruits of the afternoon, not crazy, but just like everybody else. And I wish in my heart of hearts that I had known I was going to play for more people than I ever would play for again.
Well, it's one of those things where, as someone who's a rock journalist and also a connoisseur of the fruits, myself, when I read that, I was like, he jumped up there in a state that most people would have been scared deathly to walk up there,
To be fair, and I've tried to explain this to journalists before, there are degrees of intoxication in any kind of hallucinogen. I didn't really know what I was being offered as I walked up the stairs long before I actually went on. And because I'm from New York, I split it and took half to see where I was going.
Yeah.
It was somewhere 2 hours later.
Well,
It would be a good idea to put me on stage.
When I've watched that clip, there's just so much joy in your face, especially when right before you went on, that announcer talked about that baby that was born, and there was so much love with what you had to say about, giving birth and just the circle of life type of thing.
Yeah. You could really do a lot of comedy based on that. Unfortunately.
Well, and one of the songs that you played, in my opinion, is one of my favorite songs, and that's "Darling, Be Home Soon." And I was curious, that line that's so haunting to me personally is, and now a quarter of my life is almost past. I think I've come to see myself at last. And I was curious, with that line, a quarter of my life is almost past, with yourself, in the next couple of years you'll be 75. I was curious about those lines being applied to where you are right now.
Oh yeah, let's go for 3/4 because I'd love to make 100.
Does that song take on a new meaning as you get older?
I don't know about that. It is a consistently good meaning, but
it's a timeless song.
Increased, like I could talk a lot of shit when I was a teenager and a young 20-year-old, and not all of it is earned knowledge. So in things like that or younger generation, I wrote that before I was a father, and I've often thought to myself, shut up. It's not going to be that way.
Well, it's almost like, for me, when I think about Paul McCartney writing In My Life at such a young age,
Yes, right.
Have you ever...
No, we were all wonderfully able to project all of these things.
Now, at 73, have you had any full circle moments lately, or perhaps a rebirth in your thought process?
Well, I've certainly, rediscovered life as a result of having grandchildren, and that has all happened since 70.
What's that been like for you?
And I really have enjoyed that so out of scale with any other concerns that's really been terrific. I mean, I'm very glad that I can play music and go out and still play for people and jump around, and that's my particular good genetic background, I guess, and I'd love to keep doing that, but really being a grandfather is the most exciting.
Well, it's funny is my father is now a grandpa to my niece, and I've seen this whole other side of him that's popped up that I never knew existed,
I'll bet.
But for you, I recently interviewed Steve Katz. You remember him?
Sure do. We were in a band when I was 18.
So he was coming through, and we were talking about Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and when I was interviewing him, I was unaware that you and he were in a jug band together, the Even Dozen Jug Band.
That's right.
And I was curious, for someone who was in that Greenwich Village folk scene, when was it that you jumped over to rock and roll? Because, for a long period of time, that was kind of sacrilegious.
Well, exactly. And the thing is that I had a very mixed background, which was that I would go summer times. I'd accompany my parents to Europe while my father played music in various beautiful cities, and I remained with my mom in Florence. And then, bang, at what was I, 15, I began going to a prep school in New Jersey, where the language was doo-wop, and the beginnings of some really great music that, I mean, as it was filtering to white folks. We all, as players, were just trying to learn everything we could. And then I came back to Greenwich Village because I'd finished prep school, and I was kind of amused by the fact that audiences were so segmented at that time because they were they had these very strict preferences. And so here I was, I'd spent the last 4 years trying to get a good acoustic instrument going, but I was now at the dawn of a Les Paul, and I just couldn't see anything further. And it was a moment where if you played that in a coffee house, people would say, "Are you finger picking a Les Paul?" Yes, that's what I'm doing. And it was kind of like, that's so wrong.
What was Dylan at Newport as dramatic as people say, or was it just inevitable?
Well, look, Spoonful, I feel, are like the band that played the same gig and were prepared. As much fun and as nuclear as Bob's song was, and as genuine as the skills of the Butterfield band were, and in many cases are, it wasn't a coherent, it wasn't coherent rock and roll to me. Yeah. And I think the Spoonful did a much better job a year later.
What do you think?